Hello, in this video I'm going to explain how to answer the questions in the Edexcel GCSE Maths Paper 3 from November 2019, the foundation tier. The purpose of this video is for your learning and understanding, not just the answers. There are of course other videos out there. Write down two factors of 12. Factors of 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. You can write any two of them for the 1 mark. Find 1/3 of 30. That means 30 divided by 3, and that gives us 10. If you just write 10, you would get the 1 mark. Write 0.7 as a fraction. If I write the place value headings, I have units and tenths. That means we have 7 tenths, and we would get the mark for writing 7 tenths. Here is a list of numbers. Write down the number from the list that is a multiple of 6. That means it's in the 6 times tables. If I start listing the first few, I have 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, and so on. From the list, the only number that's in the 6 times tables is 18, and we just need to write 18 for the 1 mark. Change 4 kilometers into meters. So we are working with kilometers and meters. We know that 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters. We are converting 4 kilometers. If we go from 1 to 1,000, we need to multiply by 1,000. Do the same over here. And our answer is 4,000 meters. And for 1 mark, you only need to write the answer. Here is a grid of squares. Write down the ratio of the number of shaded squares to the number of unshaded squares. So we must write shaded first and then unshaded. Shaded squares are 1, 2, 3. So we would write 3. Unshaded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we would write 5. Remember, the order is very important. For 1 mark, we just need to write 3 to 5. W equals 4u add 3. Find the value of w when u equals 8. So we need to substitute. W is equal to 4 multiplied by 8 and then add 3. We now have 1 mark. That gets us 32 add 3. So our final answer is 35. And now we have our second mark. Here are the first 5 terms of a sequence. Write down the next 2 terms of the sequence. So they want this one and this one. We now need to work out the pattern. It's add 2, add 3, add 4, add 5. So then it must be add 6 and then add 7. So my first number would be 21, and now I have 1 mark. And then the second number will be 28, and now I have my second mark. Mrs. Brown asked each child in her class which pet they liked best. Here are her results. Complete the frequency table for this information. I'm going to start by filling in the tally column first. So we have dog, cross it out, rabbit, cat, dog, dog, hamster, cat, dog, rabbit, hamster, cat, cat, dog, dog, cat, dog, rabbit, and dog. Now I'm going to fill in the frequencies. So that is 8, 3, 5, and 2. If we have 2 or more of the frequencies correct, we would get 1 mark. If we have all of them correct, then we would get 2 marks. On the grid below, draw a bar chart for this information. To start with, I'm going to label the x-axis as pets, and then I've got this section for dogs, a gap, and then the next one for rabbit, a gap, and then the next one for cat, a gap, and then the next one for hamster. Then I'm going to label the y-axis, that's frequency. Each box will be equal to 1, so I've got 2, 4, 6, and 8. Now I have 1 mark. I need to use a ruler when drawing each bar. If we have 2 or more of the bars drawn correctly, we would get our 2nd mark. If everything has been done correctly, we would get 3 marks. Part C, write down the most popular pet. Looking at our frequency table or the bar graph, we can see the most popular is dog, and that would get us 1 mark. On the diagram, draw a diameter of the circle. Diameter is a straight line that goes from one side to the other, and it must go through the center. That would get us 1 mark. On the diagram, draw a segment of the circle. Shade the segment. First, we need to draw a chord. The segment is the area shaded. It's always between a chord and an arc, and that would get you 1 mark. Dylan buys 13 bicycle lights for £7.50 each. He pays with 5 £20 notes. How much change should Dylan get? First of all, I'm going to work out how much he is paying. Dylan is paying with 5 lots of £20 notes. So 5 multiplied by 20, and we get £100. Then we need to know how much his total cost is. He's buying 13 lights, so 13 multiplied by £7.50. That gets us £97.50. For having either one of these lines, we would get 1 mark. Now we can work out the change. So we will do £100, subtract £97.50, and that's our 2nd mark. And then for getting £2.50, we would get our 3rd mark. The normal price of a bicycle is £120. In a sale, there is 1/5 off the normal price of the bicycle. Work out the price of the bicycle in the sale. So step 1 is to work out 1/5 of £120. So we're going to do £120 divided by 5, and that gets us £24. We now have 1 mark. Then, because it said the word off, we need to do £120 subtract £24, and we get £96 and our 2nd mark. Cornflakes are sold in 2 sizes of box. Ray buys 3 small boxes of cornflakes and some large boxes of cornflakes. In total, she buys 5,850 grams of cornflakes. Work out the number of large boxes of cornflakes Ray buys. Step 1, we need to work out the total weight of the small boxes. So that is 3 multiplied by 450 grams. That gives us 1,350 grams. We now have 1 mark. Step 2, we need to work out the total weight of large boxes. Remember, the overall weight is 5,850. So we will do that, subtract the 1,350 grams. That gets us 4,500 grams. Step 3, we need to work out the number of boxes. So we need to do 4,500 grams divided by 750 grams. We now have a second mark. The answer is 6 boxes, and now we have a third mark. The stem and leaf diagram below gives information about the ages of people in a social club. Find the range of these ages. Range, remember, is the biggest value, subtract the smallest value. So the biggest value is this one over here, and the smallest value is this one over here. For the first mark, we must write 74 subtract 31. That gets us our first mark. Then, for saying 43 or 43 years, we would get the second mark. Here is a rectangle. Kobe has to find the perimeter of this rectangle. He writes perimeter is equal to 7 multiplied by 3. What mistake has Kobe made? Kobe has calculated area, not perimeter. And that would get us 1 mark. Here is a triangle. Iram solves a problem about this triangle to find the value of x. Her answer is x is equal to -2. Explain why Iram's answer must be wrong. Notice here one of the lengths is x, and lengths cannot be negative. And that would get us 1 mark. There are 800 students at a school. Each student has either a school dinner or a packed lunch. 31% of the students have packed lunches. 55% of the students are boys. 60% of the boys have school dinners. How many girls have packed lunches? You must show all your working. This question has 2 types of information, what they have for lunch and whether they are a boy or a girl. So I will use a two-way table. I'm going to have boys over here, girls over here, and then total. And then we have school dinners, packed lunch, and total. Now I'm going to use each line of information to fill it in. So the first line, 800 students at a school, I can tick that off. Then it says 31% of the students have packed lunch, so 0.31 multiplied by 800, we get 248. I am going to put that over here under packed lunch. Now I can work out how many students have school dinners. So 800 subtract 248, and that gets me 552. Now I have 1 mark. Moving on, where it says 55% of the students are boys, I am going to do 0.55 multiplied by 800, and that gets us 440, so I can write that in. Now I can work out how many girls there are. So 800 subtract 440, and that is 360. Now we have 2 marks. The question then goes on to say 60% of the boys have school dinners, so we need to do 60%, 0.60, multiplied by 440, because it said 60% of the boys. That gets us 264. And now I can work out how many girls have school dinners. So I'm going to do 552 subtract 264. That gets me 288. Now I have a 3rd mark. Last step, we need to work out how many girls have packed lunch. So we're going to do 360 subtract 288, and that gets us 72. And that is our 4th mark. Of course, you don't have to use a two-way table, but visually, for me, this would be easier. In a bag, there are only red counters, blue counters, green counters, and yellow counters. A counter is taken at random from the bag. The table shows the probabilities of getting a red counter or a yellow counter. The number of blue counters to the number of green counters is equal to 3 to 4. Complete the table. To start with, we need to remember probabilities add up to 1. So the first step is to do 1 subtract 0.4 subtract 0.25. That gets us 0.35. That is our first mark. So we know the blue probability add the green probability will give us 0.35. Now we're going to use the ratio. So step 2, we've got blue and then green, we've got 3 to 4. So in terms of parts or shares, we've got 7 altogether, but we are sharing out 0.35. To go from 7 to 0.35, if you don't know, we need to do 0.35 divided by 7, and that gets us 0.05. That means I need to do 7 multiplied by 0.05. Do that everywhere. Now we have our second mark. 3 multiplied by 0.05 is 0.15. So I can write that in, and I have my third mark. And 4 multiplied by 0.05 is 0.20. And now I have my fourth mark. Complete the table of values for y equals 4x subtract 6. We don't actually need to show method, but I will show you for your understanding. We need to do 4 multiplied by -1 and then subtract 6. Type that into your calculator and we get -10. Do the same for the next x value. 4 multiplied by 0 subtract 6. We get -6. And keep on going. Now we have 2. For having 2 or 3 of the values correct, we would get 1 mark. For having all 4 of them correct, we would get 2 marks. Moving on the grid, draw the graph of y equals 4x subtract 6 for values of x from -1 to 4. In other words, use the table. We need to see each one of these as a coordinate point. So we need to plot -1, -10, then 0, -6, and then 1, -2, and then 2, 2, 3, 6, and finally 4, 10. If we plot all of them correctly, we get 1 mark. For the final mark, we must join them all up using a ruler. Try and be as accurate as possible and make sure you go all the way across the set of axes. Reflect shape P in the line y equals 3. Y equals 3 means every single y coordinate is 3, so that's this point over here, and all of these random points have a y coordinate of 3. So our line of reflection is a horizontal line going through 3. To reflect, do it point by point. This point over here is 1 square above the line, so we need to go 1 square below. This point over here is also 1 square above, so we need to go 1 square below. And finally, this top point over here is 1, 2, 3, 4 above, so we need to go 4 below. Now I'm going to join up all the corners with a ruler. For having the perfect reflection, you would get 2 marks. If you've reflected it, but not on y equals 3, but another horizontal line, you would get 1 mark. Solve 4 bracket x subtract 6 is equal to 44. I am going to show you 2 methods. The first one is to take it as it is. So using the flowchart method, I have x, subtract 6, and then everything's multiplied by 4, and that gives us 44. To go backwards, we need to do the inverse, so divide by 4, and then add 6. Now we have 1 mark. 44 divided by 4 is 11, add on 6 and we get 17. So x is equal to 17. That is one method to solve this equation. Another method is to expand first. So instead of taking it as it is, we would say 4x subtract 6 equals 44 and then expand. So now we are solving 4x subtract 24 is equal to 44. Again, using the flowchart method, we have x multiplied by 4 first this time, and then subtract 24. And it's still 44. Going backwards, we need to do the inverse, add 24, and then divide by 4. For having written that, we would get 1 mark, and the answer is still 17. And there would be our second mark. It doesn't matter which method you choose, both are valid, and both with the correct answer would get you 2 marks. The universal set is equal to 1, 2, 3 all the way up to 13. Set A is multiples of 3. Set B is even numbers. Complete the Venn diagram for this information. Before starting, I'm going to list out the numbers in set A. So 3, 6, 9, and 12. Set B would be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. Before filling in any numbers, we need to label the rings. Now we have 1 mark. Next, start by filling in the intersection first. So what number is in both of them? We can see that 6 is in both of them. Cross them out, and from the universal set. 12 is also in both lists. Now we have our second mark. Now I'm going to focus on set A. So we have 3 and 9. Now I have my third mark. Now I can focus on set B. Always make sure to cross out from all lists. Now we need to fill in the numbers that would be on the outside. So go to the universal set and see the numbers that haven't been crossed out. That's 1, 5, 7, 11, and 13. And now we have our fourth mark. Franco buys a house for £146,500. He sells the house for £158,220. Calculate the percentage profit Franco makes. For questions like this, I use the formula difference over original multiplied by 100 because they're looking for percentage profit. Let's start with working out the difference. So we need to do 158,220 subtract 146,500. We get 11,720, and now we have 1 mark. Then to work out the percentage profit, we need to do 11,720 divided by the original number. The original is how much he bought it for, so we need to divide by 146,500 and then multiply all of that by 100. We now have our second mark. The answer is then 8%, and that is our third mark. Expand and simplify x add 5 multiplied by x subtract 9. I like to use the grid method. So along the top I have x and then add 5. On the side I have x and then subtract 9. For the top left box I need to do x multiplied by x, which is x squared. For the top right box I need to do positive 5 multiplied by x, which is positive 5x. For the bottom left, I need to do x multiplied by negative 9, so negative 9x. And for this last box, I need to do positive 5 multiplied by negative 9, which is negative 45. I now have 1 mark. When writing this out, we also need to simplify, so we need to collect the like terms, which is this diagonal. I have x squared and I have a negative 45. Negative 9 add 5 is negative 4x. And for having this as my final answer, I would get my second mark. Factorize fully 9x squared add 6x. I like to use the upside down bus stop method. So I need to think of a factor of 9x squared add 6x. I can use x. 9x squared divided by x is 9x. 6x divided by x is 6. Now I need to think of a factor of 9x add 6. I can use 3. 9x divided by 3 is 3x. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Now I need to think of a factor of 3x add 2. The only factor is 1, so now I stop. And now I have 1 mark. The inside of the bracket is 3x, add 2. The outside of the bracket is the product of the left-hand side. And in our case, that is 3x. For having a fully correct answer, we now have 2 marks. Use your calculator to work out the following. Write down all the figures on your calculator display. You must have a scientific calculator for this question. If your calculator has the fraction button, you can type it in exactly as you see on the screen. If not, you will need to use brackets. So you will need to type in an open bracket and then 29 squared, subtract 4.6 and then close your bracket. The fraction line means divide. And then you need to do square root and then open up a bracket. 35 subtract 1.9 cubed and then close your bracket. You should end up with 157.66 and it goes on. If you stop there, you get 1 mark. If you write out the full answer, you would get 2 marks. Write your answer to part A correct to 4 significant figures. So we need to round 157.668255 to 4 significant figures. From the left, the first non-zero figure is the 1. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Draw a line and focus on this 6. We can ignore everything else. This 6 is above 5, so when we round it, we get 157.7, and that is our 1 mark answer. The scatter graph shows information about the marks a group of students got in a science test and in a maths test. Jamie got a mark of 34 in the science test. Using the scatter graph, find an estimate for Jamie's mark in the maths test. It is an estimate because we first need to draw a line of best fit. Everyone's line of best fit will be different. You need to make sure your line of best fit has been drawn on with a ruler. If possible, it's gone through a few of the points, and it must have an even number of points on either side. So here's my line of best fit, and now I have 1 mark. Now go to Science, go to 34 and draw a line upwards. Once you get to the line of best fit, go across. As you can see, using my line of best fit, Jamie must have got 39 in the maths test, and that would get me my 2nd mark. The table gives information about the times taken in seconds by 18 students to run a race. Work out an estimate for the mean time. Give your answer correct to 3 significant figures. First, we need to work out the midpoint for each class interval. To work out the midpoint, we need to do 5 add 10 and then divide by 2. So we get 7.5. We do the same for the next one. 10 add 15 divided by 2, we get 12.5. And we need to keep doing that for the next 2 intervals. So 17.5 and then 22.5. Next, we need to add another column and call that FM, which is frequency multiplied by the midpoint. When we do 7.5 multiplied by 1, we get 7.5. 12.5 multiplied by 2, we get 25. 17.5 multiplied by 7, we get 122.5. 22.5 multiplied by 8, we get 180. We now have 1 mark. Next, we need to work out the total of the FM. If we add up 7.5, 25, 122.5 and 180, we get 335. Next, we need to do total FM divided by total F, so the total frequency. That is 335 divided by 18. Remember, the total number of students is 18. We now have our 2nd mark. That gives us 18.6111, and it goes on. The question says 3 significant figures, so that means the answer will be 18.6, and now we have our 3rd mark. Write 37 cubic centimeters in cubic millimeters. So we have 2 headings, millimeters and centimeters. I know that 10 millimeters is equal to 1 centimeter. However, we are working with volume because we have cubic centimeters and cubic millimeters. So I'm going to cube everything. Also the 10, also the 1. But remember, 1 cubed is just 1. If I go from 1 to 10 cubed, I need to multiply by 10 cubed. We are converting 37 cubic centimeters, so that means I'm also going to multiply by 10 cubed. The answer is then 37,000 cubic millimeters. And you can just write that answer for the 1 mark. Nima was driving to a hotel. He looked at his sat-nav at 13:30. So from 13:30 he still needs to drive 65 miles. Nima arrived at the hotel at 14:48. Work out the average speed of the car from 13:30 to 14:48. You must show all your working. To work out speed, we need distance and we need time. We know the distance, but we do not know the overall time. So that's the first thing we are going to work out. I'm going to use my number line method. I've got 13:30. If I add on 30 minutes, that will take me to 14 o'clock. If I add on 48 minutes, that will take me to 14:48. So the total time is equal to 30 add 48, which is 78 minutes. Now I have 1 mark. Remember, when we use these headings, distance and time, always write down what you know first. We know 65 miles was travelled in 78 minutes. Remember, speed in this instance will be miles per hour. So if we want per hour, we need it per 60 minutes. So what I'm going to do now is find a common factor of 78 and 60. The one I can think of is 3. I need to go from 78 to 3. So if I just do 78 divided by 3, I get 26. That means 78 divided by 26 is equal to 3. 3 multiplied by 20 gives me 60. Now I have my second mark. I'm going to do the same on the other side. I'm going to divide by 26. That gets me 2.5. And I'm going to multiply by 20. I now have a third mark. That gets me 50. For writing 50 miles per hour, I have my fourth mark. Write 32,460,000 in standard form. If I write out the number but include a decimal point, that will make it slightly easier for me. So I'm going to put the decimal point at the end. Remember, standard form is always a multiplied by 10 to the power of n, where a is between 1 and 10. So we need to move the decimal point backwards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 places. So our answer is 3.246 multiplied by 10 to the power of 7, because we moved the decimal point 7 places. All you need to do for the 1 mark is write this answer. Write 4.96 times 10 to the negative 3 as an ordinary number. For standard form questions that have a negative power, the trick is to count out the zeros. So in this case, we have 0.00496. The power was negative 3, so we should have 1, 2, 3 zeros. And again, for writing this answer, you would get the 1 mark. Asma was asked to compare the following two numbers. A equals 6.212 times 10 to the 8, and B is equal to 4.73 times 10 to the 9. She says 6.2 is bigger than 4.73, so A is bigger than B. Is Asma correct? You must give a reason for your answer. We will write she is wrong. We must give a reason. We will say because. 10 to the 8 is smaller than 10 to the 9. And now we have 1 mark. The diagram shows a regular pentagon and a parallelogram. Work out the size of the angle marked X. You must show all your working. Step 1 is to work out the interior angle of a regular pentagon. The formula is 180 subtract 360 over n, where n is the number of sides. In this case, that's 5. We end up with 108 degrees. Now we have 1 mark. I'm going to label this angle as y, and for step 2, angle y is equal to 180 subtract 117 because co-interior angles add up to 180. Now we have 63 degrees. That is our second mark. Step 3, to work out angle x, we need to do the interior angle of the pentagon, so 108, subtract angle y, so subtract 63. Now we have our third mark. We end up with 45 degrees, and that is our fourth mark. A is in the shape of a quarter circle of radius 15 centimeters. B is in the shape of a circle. The area of A is 9 times the area of B. Show that the radius of B is 2.5 centimeters. If it says show that, we need to show perfect method that results in 2.5 centimeters. So step 1, let's work out the area of A. For a circle, we would do pi r squared, but because it's a quarter of a circle, we need to divide that by 4. So now we are going to have pi multiplied by 15 squared all over 4. That gives us 225 over 4 pi. I'm going to leave my answer like this. I now have 1 mark. Step 2, we are told that A is equal to 9 times the area of B. So I know that 225 over 4 pi is equal to 9b. To work out b then, we need to divide both sides by 9. So now we know that area B is equal to 25 over 4 pi. That is our second mark. And then, remember, still show full method. We know the area of a circle is pi r squared, which is equal to 25 over 4 pi. I can cancel out pi from both sides. So now we have r squared is equal to 25 over 4. To work out just r, we need to square root both sides. And that gives us 2.5. For the third mark, all of the method needs to flow and your result then needs to be 2.5. Thank you for watching. Have a lovely day.